When the galaxy was young, every world was connected through trade, travel, and shared discoveries. But time changed everything. Greed, power, and endless wars tore alliances apart. Many small civilizations disappeared quietly, their voices lost in the noise of greater empires. Among them were the Aurelians, a gentle race who once lived peacefully on a bright blue world covered with golden plains and rivers that shimmered like light itself. The Aurelians were not warriors or conquerors. They believed in harmony, music, and art more than weapons or borders. They had no armies, no fleets, and no way to defend themselves when the storms of war swept across the stars. Their cities, once full of laughter and song, were now filled with silence. The Galactic Council had once promised protection for every species. But promises are easy when times are good. When trouble began and the strong turned against the weak, the Council simply redirected their priorities. The Aurelians were far from any trade route. Their planet offered no valuable minerals and they held no political influence. So, when their sun began to fade and their resources collapsed, the galaxy turned away. The message they sent out was small, a weak, trembling signal that drifted through the cold emptiness of space for months. It carried no demands, only a quiet plea. We are still here. Please help us. Most spacefaring civilizations ignored it. Some even deleted it without opening it. But by a strange twist of fate, that fragile signal found its way to a small planet at the edge of the galaxy, a planet called Earth. At first, it was just noise. The human operators at the Deep Space Listening Center were used to strange sounds from the stars. Echoes, static, old satellite transmissions. But one technician noticed the repeating pattern hidden inside the static. It was faint, almost like a heartbeat. She slowed it down, filtered it, and heard words that weren't in any known language. Scientists, linguists, and code breakers spent nights trying to understand it. When they finally decoded the message, a chill ran through the control room. It was a voice, tired, fading, but full of hope. It spoke of hunger, sickness, and loneliness. It said that the people of Aurelian were dying, not because of war, but because no one cared enough to help. For a long moment, the room was silent. Then someone said softly, "We can't just ignore this." News of the alien message spread across Earth. Some called it a hoax. Others said humanity had no right to interfere. There were meetings, arguments, and long debates. The world had its own problems: hunger, inequality, disasters, and distrust among nations. But somehow the thought of another intelligent race dying alone in the dark touched something deep inside human hearts. People began to volunteer. Not soldiers or politicians, but doctors, engineers, farmers, and teachers. They didn't do it for fame or reward. They did it because the idea of a species vanishing while someone could have helped was unbearable. A small alliance was formed. They called it the Human Relief Expedition. No governments owned it. It was powered by the will of ordinary people, donations, hand-built equipment, and the hope that their effort could make a difference. Months later, a large silver ship stood ready on the launch pad. It wasn't a warship or a colony vessel, just a refitted transport loaded with food, medicine, and tools. On its hull were painted the words, "For those who are forgotten." The launch was quiet. There were no news cameras or cheering crowds, just a few people standing under the night sky, watching the rocket rise into the stars. Inside the ship, the crew looked out the windows as the blue curve of Earth faded behind them. None of them knew if they would return, but none of them hesitated. The journey was long, longer than any mission before it. The coordinates in the alien message led them to a part of space that was rarely traveled. There were no beacons, no trade lanes, and no signs of life. Days turned into weeks, then months. The crew passed the time maintaining the ship, running diagnostics, and sending messages back to Earth. Sometimes they would gather in the common area and talk about why they joined. One said he'd lost his family in a natural disaster years ago, and he couldn't stand the thought of others being left alone. Another said she simply wanted to prove that compassion didn't need to stop at species, but even the strongest hearts began to doubt. What if the message was old? What if the Aurelians were already gone? What if this whole mission was for nothing? Then one day the ship's scanners detected a faint signal, the same pattern they had heard months ago. The coordinates matched. The Aurelian world was close. When the planet finally came into view, everyone fell silent. It looked wounded. Gray clouds covered most of the sky and large areas of the surface were burned. Rivers had dried into cracks, and the faint glow of ruined cities could be seen even from orbit. They descended slowly through the thick atmosphere. Dust and ash swirled around the ship as it landed on a flat, cracked plain near what seemed to be the remains of a city. The air was thin but breathable. The silence was haunting. The humans stepped out wearing light masks and carrying boxes of supplies. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, from the shadows of a broken building, small figures appeared. The Aurelians were smaller than humans, their skin pale and glowing faintly under the dim light. Their large eyes reflected sadness more than fear. They looked exhausted, as if life itself had been slowly slipping away from them. The human crew stood still, not wanting to frighten them. One of them raised a hand slowly and opened a small packet of food, showing it was safe. The nearest Aurelian tilted its head, watching with wide eyes. When the human placed the food gently on the ground and stepped back, the alien hesitated for a moment, then approached and touched it carefully. When it realized it was real, food, warm and edible, its expression changed. Its eyes filled with something the humans hadn't seen in any recording or data: hope. More Aurelians came out from hiding. They were thin, weak, and trembling, but they began to gather around. The humans offered more supplies: water, medicine, blankets, anything they could. No words were exchanged at first. The two species simply looked at one another, both trying to understand. It was not about language. It was about presence. The Aurelians had believed they were completely abandoned, forgotten by every power in the galaxy. And yet, here stood beings from a distant planet, humans, who had crossed the stars not for profit but to help. The crew set up tents and generators. They worked through the night repairing small energy units and creating safe shelters. The Aurelians watched closely, their eyes following every movement. Slowly they began to help, carrying small objects, showing hidden storage spots, and guiding the humans to water sources. By the second day, a bond began to form. The aliens tried to mimic human words, and the humans smiled and tried to understand. Laughter, quiet at first, started to echo across the camp. As the first sunrise appeared on the Aurelian horizon, golden light broke through the dusty clouds. It illuminated the humans and aliens standing together. One of the crew members recorded the moment, whispering, "They're not forgotten anymore." From that day, something powerful awakened. The humans didn't come as saviors. They came as friends. And in a galaxy that had chosen to look away, their small act of compassion became the start of something far greater than anyone could have imagined.